Assalamualaikum and very good morning. Okay, let's continue our topic about the exchange rate markets. So this subtopic is about exchange rate in short run, a supply and demand analysis. Okay, you can refer to the figure 3 in the module. Okay, so this figure show the equilibriums in the foreign exchange markets. Okay, where to show the excess of supply at EA and cause the value of the dollar to falls, and the excess demand of EC cause the value of dollar to rise. So the explanation is the supply curve for domestic asset. US as the home country, so domestic assets are denominated in dollar. The quantity of dollar asset supplied is primarily the quantity of bank deposit bonds and equities in the US. The figure 3 show the supply curve as is vertical, show the quantity supplied at any exchange rate is the same, meaning that so this is the supply curve of the dollar supply, meaning that it will be same at any exchange rates at the price of 95 cents, $1 or $1.05. So the supply curve is about the same. So the demand curve traces out the quantity of domestic, which is dollar assets, demanded at each current exchange rates by holding everything else constant, particularly the expected future value of the exchange rates. At point A, current exchange rates at EA, current exchange rate is at E star. It implies that the dollar at EA is more likely to rise in value, meaning that this one is E star, this one is EA. So meaning that the value is increased from $1 to $1.05. Okay, the greater the expected rise, which is appreciation of the dollar, the higher is the relative expected returns on dollar domestic assets. Because the dollar assets are more desirable to hold, the quantity of dollar assets demand will rise to point B. Okay, will rise to point B from here to here. Okay. At point C, exchange rate fall. Even higher expected appreciations of the dollar, higher expected returns, and greater quantity of dollar assets. Demand curve downward sloping, indicating lower current value of the dollar, the quantity demand of the dollar asset is higher. Okay, equilibrium in the foreign exchange market. The market is in equilibrium when the quantity of dollar asset demand equals its quantity supplied. Figure 3 show at point B, exchange rate is at E star. Okay, at EA, the quantity of dollar assets for supply curve greater than the quantity demanded. Okay, conditions of excess supply, the dollar will fall in value until it reaches the equilibrium at E star, meaning that this one show the excess of supply at EA, so cause the value of the dollar will fall until it will reach the equilibrium at point B. Okay, at EC, the quantity of dollar asset demand exceed the quantity supply. Conditions of excess demand, the Malaysian ringgit will fall in value, the dollar will fall in value until the reach the equilibrium at E star. Okay, so at point C, it show the excess of demands, meaning that the demands is greater than the supply, so the cost value of the dollar to rise and reach the equilibrium point at point B. Okay, Now look at the change in exchange rates. Refer to the figure 4 in the module. Okay, the first ones, the changes in the exchange rates. The first one is domestic interest rate. Domestic interest rates. An increase in the domestic interest rate shift the demand curve for domestic assets demand to the right and cause the domestic currency to appreciate and vice versa. Okay, the demand curve shift to the right from D1 to D2, and it will create the appreciations of the currency from E1 to E2, from 1.1 to 0.2. So the conclusion, a rise in domestic interest rates shift the demand schedule to the right and cause an appreciation of the domestic currency, and vice versa, which is a fall in interest rates of domestic shift the curve schedule to the left and cause a depreciation of domestic currency. Okay, if the interest rate falls, so D1 will shift to the left. It might create the demand at D3. Okay, now look at the change in foreign interest rates. Okay, refer to the figure 5 in the module. When foreign interest rate rises, okay, ceteris paribus, meaning other things hold constant, the returns on foreign asset rises relative to the returns on dollar asset. The relative to expected returns on dollar will fall. People want to hold fewer dollar assets. Quantity demand decrease. Okay, increase in foreign interest rates shift demand to the left and cause the domestic currency to depreciate, and vice versa. Okay, so a rise in the foreign interest rate shift the demands to the left from D1 to D2, so leading the falls in exchange rate from E1 to E2. Okay, so the new equilibrium will reach at 0.1 move to the 0.2. Okay, in other way to look, if expected returns on euro increase due to increase in interest rates of euro, will lead people to buy euros and sell dollar, and value of dollar will fall. So the conclusion is an increase in foreign exchange rates. The foreign exchange rate IF shift the demand schedule to the left and cause the domestic currency to depreciate, and vice versa. Okay, now look at the change in the expected future exchange rates. Okay, refer to the figure 6. Any factor that causes the expected future exchange rates to fall will decrease the expected appreciations of dollar, hence rises the expected appreciations of the euro. Okay, when the future exchange rate decrease, it will decrease the expected appreciations of USD. Okay, expected appreciations of euro. Higher expected returns on euro deposits will shift the schedule for the expected return to the right and lead to appreciation of domestic currency, and conversely. Okay, so a rise in the expected future exchange rate shift the demand to the right from D1 to D2 and leading to a rise in the currency from E1 to E2. Okay, so the conclusion is a rise in the expected future exchange rate shift the demand schedule to the right and cause the appreciation of the domestic currency. A fall in the expected future exchange rate shift the demand schedule to the left and cause the depreciations of the domestic currency. Okay, so from the module also you can see the summarizations of the factor that shift the demand curve for domestic assets and affect the exchange rate. So the first is the domestic interest rate. Okay, this is what I have discussed earlier. So the domestic interest rates, so the change in factor will be increased. The change in quantity demands of domestic asset of each exchange rate also will increase. To respond to the exchange rates will be increased. So foreign exchange rate increase, decrease, and decrease. Expected domestic price level, change in factor will increase and will decrease the quantity demands of domestic assets, and the exchange rate will be decreased. And also happen to the expected trade barriers. If the factors increase, means the trade barrier increase, the quota increase, so the quantity demand for domestic asset will be increased, and the exchange rate also will be increased. So last but not least, the expected import demand. If the import demand increase, so the quantity demand for domestic assets will be decreased and exchange rate will be decreased. Export demand increase, the quantity demand for domestic asset will be increased and exchange rate also will be increased. And expected productivity increase, it will increase the quantity demand for domestic assets and also will increase the exchange rate. So these figures or these tables summarizing all the factors that have been discussed on the slide earlier. Okay, so that's all for this topic. So hope you understand, and we can meet again in the next topics in the next video. Thank you very much.